oh, Hunt's ketchup. And I said, imagine if they just named it, starts with a C. Aunt's ketchup. Auntie's ketchup. I'm taking out the C, but you know what I mean. So switch the H with a C. Aunt's ketchup. Long story short, in one of these videos, I was having, I also finish all my food over there too, most of the time. It's not like this. I buy less, but then I eat every last crumb. I was doing a fancy steak mukbang. And on the side, there was like some fried food. They give me little packs of ketchup that said Hunt's. I'm like, oh, Hunt's ketchup. And I said, imagine if they just named it, starts with a C. Aunt's ketchup. Auntie's ketchup. I'm taking out the C, but you know what I mean. So switch the H with a C. Aunt's ketchup. I said to myself, why is that categorized as one of the most offensive things you can say to a woman? What does it mean? So I pulled out my phone. I asked Siri. I can't ask her because it's a curse word. Definition of... I'm going to type it myself. An obscene, vulgar, offensive word for a female woman. But why is it... Okay. But it's referred to as... And then it is a woman's... Y'all know, right? Kitty cat. A woman's kitty cat. And I said to myself, why is a kitty cat the most offensive thing you can say to a woman? I would think the most offensive thing you say to a woman is that she's uneducated, that she's maybe manipulative. I think that's way more offensive and accusatory than saying you are a kitty. But she has a kitty. And if you're also a woman calling her that, you have a kitty too. Like, who decided this was so offensive? To me, it sounds like it's like watered down, babied insults. But long story short, I said, who decided that pointing your finger at another human and saying, you are a genital, that's an offensive thing? I've seen girls pull each other's hair out and fight with their fists for saying the C word. They'll say female dog over and over. You're such a bench. I didn't say the B word, I said bench, the one that you sit on, a bench, concrete bench in the park. Okay. You're such a bench. Why are you a bench? And they'll point and they'll say that, but the moment one of them says the C word, ugh. And I've seen a guy lose his job for saying the C word. I'm like, but the word only has as much power as the person receiving it allows it to have. There's no weight in air when someone breathes and they voice, air coming out. That's all. Words are just words. It's like I should start saying, you're a cheeseburger. You're a cheeseburger. Now, what's cheeseburger to you? Whatever your mind says a cheeseburger is. But the actual word doesn't hurt you. I'm not physically taking anything from you. I'm not stealing from you. I'm committing robbery. I'm not destroying your property. There are no damages physically. It's only mentally destroying.
There is no weight in air. It's debatable. But it's not the air that is the injury in a slur. It is not at all like a punch. Punching a random individual will not likely end up in a pogrom or a massacre or a Holocaust. But villainizing, caricaturing, and dehumanizing a group of people has led to mass murder, mass violence, discrimination on a grand scale, etc. Even if we were to take Nick's example about stealing someone's property, the act of stealing someone's property is very different than the condition of being known as a thief. The person known as a thief may be not welcome in stores, be turned away from finding a partner, will be surveilled by the neighborhood watch and the police, will not be able to find a job. And in some places, being known as a thief is enough to get you killed. Stealing someone's property might make you a thief, but you can also be known as a person who once committed the act of theft. Like you can say, John, remember when you stole that chocolate bar in high school? And people can laugh about it because John is something over and above his past act of theft. He retains his individuality, his belonging in a community, his humanness. But someone who is known primarily as a thief may very well have a name, but that name is irrelevant. What matters is that they are a kind of being. They are a category filled in with the qualities of thievery, of disorderliness, of dishonesty, miserliness, violence, and danger. And so they are more like a rat than a person who stole something once. Rats have individual personalities too, but they are killed because they are reduced to the idea of a rat. They are reduced to what we socially have accepted a rat to be. Reducible to their ratliness. And I'm not talking about a snitch, I'm talking about like an actual rat. Although, of course, the terms snitch and rat are doing the same thing, pushing people outside of the community of the people surveilled by the police and harassed by the police, so that they are understood to be disloyal and untrustworthy, etc. So it is to push them outside of that community of the oppressed. And so what is being reacted to when someone reacts to a slur is that recognition that one is being placed outside of the human community, and now outside, vulnerable to the violence reserved for people outside of the human community, or things and beings outside the human community. Vulnerable to the treatment of rats. They are not John, the human being who is descended from Africa, but they are the N-word and all the racist, dehumanizing, excommunicating features and ideas that attend to that slur. Taken away from their individuality, they become rat-like, the villain, the thief, the predator, the criminal, the black. The people who do the crimes and so are not worthy of reparations, as Tommy Tuberville from Alabama said. It is exactly this dehumanization that rationalized and justified all of the violence of the lynch mob and white supremacist society in general. The mobs didn't go out to burn and hang John, the individual. They went out to burn alive the rat. And if you don't believe that, you might ask yourself, why have so many governments and groups focus on the extermination of populations, seem to have found the idea of dehumanizing name-calling extremely useful. Why do leaders who set out to destroy a population think of them as a dehumanized, or present them as a dehumanized collective, the black, the Arab, the illegal, etc.? They don't think of them as peoples, individuals with personalities and life experiences and unique histories, but all together as one dehumanized, amorphous blob of a group that can be basically reduced to one element, one negative element. So they are the Arabs and the migrants and the tall trees in Rwanda and the hostile native or the hostile savage in every settler colony ever. It must at least be curious that the people who, almost all of the people who are interested in the extermination of populations, often resort to what Nick is calling weightless air. He says, words have only enough power as the person who receives it allows them to have. You hear this argument a lot from people, this conservative argument from people who live in enough privilege that they are never under constant threat. They think of the problem as just a problem with emotional maturity, and one should just regulate or manage one's emotional response to something that is not more than ill manners, name calling, etc. But take that person away from a society where they are constantly catered to and worshipped and protected, and bring them into a place where society is and has always, traditionally, always been against them. And they might believe less that it is just a matter of emotional maturity. Say, for instance, we took Nikocado out of his fancy McDonald's adorned apartment and put him in prison. And in prison, someone called him a PDF. And even though he is not a PDF, imagine people kept on calling him a PDF in a place that is notorious for violence against inmates with sexual violence charges. Would he still make the argument that name calling only has just the power that you allow it to have on you? Or would he make efforts to dispel the rumors, feeling newly unsafe and that his life was in danger? And so maybe he would even lash out at the person who repeats that he is a PDF. All of a sudden, he's not in a world of wealth and attention and niceties, and in a world that is revolved around praising him, and is all of a sudden in a world that is anti-Nick. He says later that he grew up in a world where people were calling him homophobic slurs, and then he didn't let it get to him. So by that logic, women who are called the C word should get over it and shake it off and say words will never hurt me. But again, what if he was taken out of his apartment and brought to a place in Jamaica or Russia or East Europe or a small town in Colombia or a number of different places that has a history of anti-queer violence and legitimated discrimination on the level of law and jobs, etc., on top of social problems. If he was in a place where people constantly lose their lives and lose money, opportunities, social standing because they were tarnished with homophobic ideology, often through the vehicle of the slur, would he say, well, what's the big deal? Or would he see that being reduced to one's anatomy, in the case of the C word, and negatively in the case of the C word, instead of one's talents, one's individuality, one's personhood, one's selfhood, etc., that it might lead to a loss of material benefits, like your job? In a world where it is often the case that if you change your name from a black-sounding name to a white-sounding name, you stand a far better chance of getting a job and other opportunities. And you get a better price for selling your house if the person doesn't know that you, the homeowner, is black. In such a world, why should the people who have been tarred and feathered with racist ideology to the point where they lose these material benefits should just accept that a slur is nothing but weightless air? They lost money because of people's hateful idea of what blackness is. Idea is most perfectly crystallized in the idea of the N-word. Again, they lost money, which is property, if that's your chief concern. If you're living a life so privileged that the only harm that is likely to befall you is emotional harm, and we can think about that at another time, just a bruise to your ego, if that's the only harm that is likely to befall you because of you're so privileged in the colony, then yeah, of course you might just say, okay, well, what's the fuss? But in a society where people say the Jew is a thief, a conspirator, when they affix blood libel to Jewishness and position the Jew outside of the national community, If you're Jewish, can you really afford to say that all these slurs about the Jew, notably not Jewish people, but the Jew, just like it's never black people, but the blacks? Would you say all these slurs about the Jew is just weightless air, so we shouldn't be bothered by it? And when they write books talking falsely about the nature, the inherent nature and essence of the Jew, and they form political parties that are based around shouting slurs at Jewish people, and those political parties, coupled with the authors of the nature of the Jew, team up together, work together, and create school textbooks that they distribute to school children. Are you just to say, it's just mean words being said? And when they do what they want with their own property and scrawl the slur across their own property, but carefully also facing and visible to the public, do we say it's just a word? And when they depict the Jew as evil in anti-Semitic cartoons, do we say pictures too can never hurt me? Because if it is everywhere repeated to the point that it is instilled as a social truth that you are the villain, you are the thief, you are the evil creature, the dastardly person up to no good and to harm the fabric of society, how can you then be surprised that these ideas, so ubiquitous in the society, do not manifest and inspire people to do these small discriminations? A racist meme scrolled on a bus stop glass, or circulated on social media. So Nazi propaganda under the cover of trolling. How can you be surprised that these things don't manifest in a broken glass in your window? In a message that is most likely a message tied to a brick with a slur, again with weightless air. Why is it not likely to assume that it evolves into holocausts and exonerations for the people who have hung you from a tree for disrespect, or chipped your tooth and dragged you out of your car for an alleged traffic violation? And of course, the conservative or Nick would say, yes, okay, now it becomes a problem. Now they've moved on from words to physical harm or destruction of property. But I don't have enough faith that the people you've allowed to insult, dehumanize, and position me outside of the community that is worthy of respect and not to be subject to social violence. I don't have enough faith that these people that you've allowed to harass me will just stop at harassment. I don't know why I should have as much faith as you do, apparently, that they will have the discipline to stop at name calling. In fact, I would assume that each uttering of the slur inspires and emboldens them. It naturalizes the hateful anti-black or anti-woman misogynistic myth. And it produces a logic that allows people in power to see it normal and natural to withhold justice and protections from this group, their position outside of the human community, and into that semi-human community, or the community of rat-like people. And when they do this in their thousands with their politicians and with the police, I somehow doubt that you will be the first to run to my defense and say, wait, you guys are taking it too far. In fact, I think you'd be on the other side and defending them, and actually will say that yes, some people take it too far, but they are the exception, not the rule. The exception that burns down Black Tulsa and Colfax, etc. So no thank you. In the interest of my having or retaining the best chance of walking away with a shirt unbloodied, I do not take your word for it that the person who is calling me names and attempting to dehumanize me through those names are going to just stop at dehumanizing at the level of weightless air. I do not believe they intend to throw only weightless air at me, and I do not even believe what they are attempting is simply just words.